Hello today. One of the things that has been holding me back from putting myself out there more, speaking out more, teaching more, sharing more, is first and foremost, I don't totally know yet who I am. I feel like a lot of progress is being made currently in that, like at the moment, now, last few weeks. I'm starting to get a better understanding of who I am. But I think it's just kind of a natural part of human nature, is that when you don't know who you totally are, you just don't necessarily feel comfortable standing in front of a bunch of people or doing a bunch of videos that talk about the universe or spirituality or what have you, when you don't have a firm grasp of who you actually are, your foundation. I did receive a mark from Venus on my calf. I awoke one morning and I believe it was a spirit guide was speaking through my own mouth and said, wow, I get almost emotional whenever I bring this up, which is really interesting. A ship from Venus wants to transmit a message to you. And that was my own mouth was saying that as I awoke. And it said you, right? It's my mouth saying it, but it was like saying it to me. So I believe that was a spirit guide talking through me. I basically totally agreed to it. I'm like, yeah, give me it. And then a couple days later on 11/11, I noticed the Eye of God symbol on my calf. See, I get emotional. That's kind of telling. It shows that there's something real going on there. On 11/11/2014, I received that on my calf. But anyway, why am I saying that? So I'm still learning about that, but I feel like I'm making very good progress right now in learning about that mark and what it really means. But I do have a lot to share in the realm of consciousness because I've gravitated to other high-level information, high-level teachers who are teaching novel perspectives, incredible contexts on existence, and I'm in the process of kind of balancing it all out and trying to take it all in. So one thing did happen today was I finally interacted in the spirit realms with Jesus. Or rather, I was conscious of my interaction. I remembered my interaction in the spirit body with Jesus. I was interacting with him. Basically, it's very interesting because first of all, I want to be candid and say that this person is a person on the planet. So, and I guess one of the messages I do want to share today is that Jesus is just a dude. Okay, he's a human being. Jesus is a human being. Very advanced. Has the highest emotional IQ pretty much of anyone on the planet. Way up there. I mean, there's other people who have very high IQs in that realm who are teachers. Teal Swan has a very high emotional IQ. A little more intellectual, but still a large emotional component, emotional understanding. And that's essential to your consciousness evolution and growth, by the way, is understanding that your emotions are real and you need to address some of those, because that affects how high your consciousness can operate. If you're natively responding to things all the time, you're going to have lower consciousness. But anyway, so Jesus also has teachings along the lines of focusing on emotions, the physical Jesus. And while I was asleep, I finally got to meet him in his spirit body. And to be honest with you, I didn't know how I'd respond when I thought of that before, because one of my emotional injuries is authority. Another one of my emotional injuries, I guess, is my view of authority. I'm not fond of authority at all. I just say I'm a rebel. I don't know if I'm necessarily a rebel, but I ignore authority. I ignore it. I've never voted in my life, and I'm incredibly proud of that. It's just tough to explain how proud I am of that particular fact. But anyway, so some of Jesus' teachings are very pure. So they're very, if you're not evolved enough, you'll think they're incredibly judgmental, because basically our whole personalities are based on this facade. And that's even also something Teal Swan talks about, is these strong facades we have and how they affect our responses. We have all these triggers that affect, our emotional responses to events, and then of course consequently affects our personality and our attitudes, right? If we're having emotional responses, then we're going to display that towards people, right? But anyway, so this Jesus individual has very high standards, by definition. So almost everything that you utter or think is emotional error or a sin, because it results from some facet of the facade self and not the real self. And every now and then when I'm in a particular feisty mood, I remember I'll be intellectually, or I'll ideate. The word is ideation. I'll have ideation of me kind of intellectually sparring with this Jesus, who's a great guy. I mean, he's a very loving guy. But that just, upon reflection, I realized that when I go into those mental sparring sessions, that's really just my emotional error. It's not him. It's me just sensing some judgment where there really isn't any. Just things I have to get over. So when you meet someone in the spirit body, your natural self, you're so pure, there's very little resistance. You're just going to be you. So I always kind of wondered if I were to meet him, what would happen. It was great because I was loving. I just had this quick recollection of me floating, and he was sitting like in a chair alone, just sitting in a chair alone. And I jumped at the opportunity to finally meet him. I mean, just very confident. And I zoomed right down. I grabbed the chair and sat right in front of him. And I said, with confidence too. I'm surprised how confident I was. I don't know, in front of him. I said, "Do you know me?" I looked him right in the eye and I'm like, "Do you know me? Do you know who I am?" And he said, oh, and by the way, when I asked that question, what I was really thinking in my head was, have we ever met in the spirit realms before? Which is ironic because, right, this interaction was taking place in the spirit realm as I recalled it once I was awake. But anyway, I said, "Do you know me?" And he said, yes, you recently made a Facebook post, on our site, which is really interesting because I totally forgot about that, right? So about 2 weeks ago, I went to their Facebook site and I made a post where I just said, "You and Mary are my buddies," and I, very kind of warm, loving, just comment, "You and Mary are my buddies," and then I also included a picture of my Venus mark, and I said, "This is probably a good thing since I'm nice 51% of the time." That's basically all I said. Of course, they couldn't really leave it up there. They didn't leave it up there, so I didn't really know they'd received it. But anyway, all things told, it's interesting that he referenced that. So I do feel the experience was one way of him telling me that, hey, we acknowledge you. We got that post, So it was a very short interaction, basically. And because I happened to wake, it was during a nap, and I awoke immediately almost after that short spirit state interaction. It was not a dream. It didn't feel dreamlike whatsoever. But then I went back to sleep half an hour later, and wow, I had more experiences with him. But I think these were more dreamlike now, to be honest with you. But I felt like almost like a disciple, to be honest with you, but I was with a group. He seemed to be leading it, and I was involved somehow. And we were going to schedule a meeting. He wanted me to help one of these people, and they were Indian. And he said, "Well, what time would that be in India?" Something like that. And it was a very interesting interaction. But I felt there was a dream aspect to it because I was sort of bumbling around a little bit in that. And I think what was really going on, it was a dream meant to show me one of my, once again, emotional issues. And that is, see, during my 27 years of ADD, there were many times, I mean, not all the time, but there were many times where I was underperforming, and it was very upsetting to me. And I think I developed some emotional issues regarding work performance. Okay. Now, not in all cases. I excelled in many times too, but yes, there were also cases where I underperformed, and I developed some emotional damage from that. And so I think that was really more of just a dream message. We're also sharing some maybe other information regarding my interactions with him in other domains. But anyway, boy, I could talk about all different kinds of things. So that was a positive experience, and I've been studying his work in this realm for about 4 months. So I was pleased that it finally happened. Oh, and here's what I wanted to say is, so I'm still trying to learn who I am regarding my Venus connections, and I do want to say that I think I'm making progress in that right now. I have new materials, new information, new insights, but it's just premature to disclose that right now. But once I understand that better, I will definitely be sharing it with you. And I will tell this to you, or share this with you. One key way to grow your consciousness has to do with being able to adjust your context. And this is just something I realize that I can do really bizarrely well, is I understand context, and I can adjust my context. So, for example, a lot of people have a context of human beings, as being around for 10,000 years in a civilized fashion, or 100,000 years in just, any fashion. But, well, that's Earth, right? And maybe that's not the full story. But what about these other planets, right? What about these other planets? So basically what I'm expanding my context right now to is a multi-million year context of what humans are, right? So ETs are humans. They're humans on other planets, okay? And many of these have been around for millions of years. Now, if you've been around for millions of years, you're going to go through a lot of cycles, and the whole civilization may eventually evolve. The consciousness, right? Just like the New Earth, right? There are planets out there that have already made a full transition to being so-called New Earth. For example, there is a new Venus, right? There is a new Venus. Well, why can't we see the new Venus? Because we're not the New Earth yet. We're not at that frequency. Okay. So there is a new Venus, and it's populated with human beings. Okay. Just humans like us, but it's at a higher frequency. Anyway, I'll just stop on that note right now. Many more things I could share. I really just wanted to say that I finally interacted with Jesus. Oh, and one thing I do want to emphasize is that he's just a human being. Okay? He's very evolved. One of, if not the most. Although in this incarnation, he's still healing various issues he has. So he's not necessarily the most psychically evolved at this point. Okay? He doesn't necessarily have the largest psychic skill set, but he certainly has the most knowledge, probably in the most history. I can tell you this, Teal Swan has an amazing psychic skill set. For people who think that she's, I don't know, a fraud or something like that, it's ridiculous. She has an incredible psychic skill set. Okay, and she's just a human. Okay, well, pretty much, right? I mean, this is where it gets tricky, is because there are humans that may potentially come from other planets in the solar system or other galaxies, and they're just humans. And that's the other issue, I should say, is so in understanding myself, there's the whole starseed phenomenon, and I'm really trying to kind of understand that in a more specific sense than what most people talk about it. A lot of people talk about it in just sort of a vague way. They don't have a lot of details. Oh, beings from other planets and universes. Okay, well, what does that really mean? I mean, what does that specifically mean? How does that specifically operate? How do they incarnate? Right? So anyway, a lot of things going on, but very pleased to finally have interacted with Jesus in the spirit realm. I was very loving, and it was brief and short, and then I think I had a dream thereafter. And I'll, of course, provide more specifics in the future, but again, I need to understand who I am more fully before I do that. Have a great day. Love you. Bye.